Your house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. I'm Charlie. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. Just be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class. If you've not been watching my videos, I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff, guys. Hi guys. Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining this evening. This is Charlie Lambden. This is Moving Home with Charlie. And this evening's video is an unusual one, but a very important one. And I feel like I'll be screaming into the void, and I don't feel like it's going to make any difference. But my hope is that some people who watch this video might end up avoiding mistakes that will lead to more people being worse off when actually what you wanted was the opposite, for people who are worse off to be better off. We're going to talk about what Gary Stevenson has been saying about wealth tax. Right off the bat, I want to say to you that I agree with his diagnosis of wealth inequality and how problematic it is. And for that reason, I watched with interest and respect to Gary quite a long time. I agree that it is a problem that needs to be stopped and solved. I completely disagree with the proposed solution. And in this video, I'm going to explain why. I'm also going to invoke Sasha Yanjin to help explain it even better than I can. And before I get into it, I just want to say this. I wouldn't bother doing this on this channel, which is about moving house, if it wasn't for the fact that I think that the whole wealth tax, which is going to happen. I mean, it's almost a certainty. This is why I'm screaming into the void. The wealth tax is going to make poor people worse off. And as far as I can tell, that is mathematically irrefutable. All right. And I'll do a couple of basic things on the screen to show you that. But before we get into that, I promised someone today that I would answer this question. This is about making offers. So this is going to take 1 minute, right? About making offers. And someone sent me a message today saying, I've been following your content for a couple of months. I'm now in a position to finally buy a house as a first-time buyer. Do you think offering with a 10% reduction is reasonable? We like the house, but don't want to offend the seller. I've got a lot of new followers across all platforms, especially loads of you on X and on YouTube. Numbers are climbing really rapidly, which is fantastic. And this is really important. If you are buying a home to live in, and only if you're buying a home you want to live in, then there is no exception to the following advice on offering. And I get questions all the time. Oh, but Charlie, this is my situation. What should I offer? Charlie, this is my situation. What should I offer? I've watched your videos, but I think this situation is different. What should I offer? There are no exceptions to this advice if you are buying a home that you want to live in. And the advice is that you must formulate your maximum comfortable offer given your personal circumstances for any one particular property. And your maximum comfortable offer should have nothing to do with the asking price. It's your maximum comfortable offer. And the seller's feelings should have nothing to do with what your maximum comfortable offer is. If you are trying to secure a home that you found because you like it and you want to live in it, you should not offer less than your maximum comfortable offer, because that increases the chances of you losing it to someone else. And you should not offer more than your maximum comfortable offer, because you'd be overpaying. It's not about what a property is worth. It's about what it's worth to different people. And so you must offer what it's worth to you and no more. There are no exceptions to this. And I've had someone come and say, oh, we've had a survey back and the survey says this is da. And so now we've got to renegotiate. How much should we renegotiate by? And the answer is the same. Just revise your maximum comfortable price given the survey results. What is the maximum amount you're prepared to pay given the new information? And revise your offer accordingly. No exceptions. If it's amazing, I wish I could find a better way to communicate this point, because it doesn't seem to go in. People hear it and go, right, okay, that's his general advice, but what about my situation? I promise you there are no exceptions to this. Your maximum comfortable offer for a given property won't be the same as someone else's. And whether you are bidding against 10 other people, or whether you are the only bidder on a property, it shouldn't alter how much your maximum comfortable price is for that property. Okay? Because your offer shouldn't be any more just because other people are offering, if it's more than your maximum comfortable price, because then you're overpaying. And if you're overpaying, you're likely to be one of the people that ends up regretting your purchase. And it shouldn't be less than your maximum comfortable price either, because even if you're the only person offering, if it's less than your maximum comfortable price, you probably won't get it, or you might not get it. Do you see what I'm saying? This only works if you're buying a home rather than buying something you're trying to make money on. And when it comes to this thing about we don't want to offend the seller, that's like saying, I'm willing to pay extra to not hurt the seller's feelings. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. If yours is the best offer, you are the market for that property. And if it's not what the seller wanted, that's just tough shit for the seller. The seller hasn't got to accept your offer. And if the seller is offended, that uncomfortable feeling they've got is the cold, hard slap in the face of the realization that their house isn't worth what they thought it was. That's what being offended means. It's the discovery process of truth. That's, if it isn't that, it's not offensive. People don't get offended or upset, okay? It's just purely the discovery process of the truth of the situation. So unless you're willing to pay extra just to keep a seller happy, the seller's feelings should never enter into it. You offer your maximum comfortable price for your circumstances, your financial circumstances, your life circumstances, for that particular property, and no more and no less. And if it's accepted, great. And if it's not accepted, you walk away and move on to the next one. No exceptions. I mean, arriving at the number is tricky, but only you can do that. Anyway, that's that. I wanted to answer that question. Let's get back to Gary. So, a couple of caveats and things I want to say before I get into this. I have a motto, which is, it doesn't matter who says something, it only matters if it's true. Okay? It doesn't matter who says something, it only matters if it's true. It's foolish to disregard something that someone says because you don't like them if what they're saying is true. And similarly, it's foolish to believe something someone says if there's no evidence for it, just because you like them. Both are as silly as each other, right? It only matters if what's being said is true. That's my way of saying I'm not going into who Gary is, what his background is, what his motivations might be. I want to go into whether or not what he's saying is true. Okay, that's the first point. The second point is this. I don't think anybody disagrees with the fact that there is a massive wealth inequality problem. I haven't heard anybody say, no, there isn't. I mean, literally, there is totally unanimous agreement with the fact that that problem exists. But if you look at it objectively, it is not the fault of any billionaires. There are no evil people wanting to make poor people poorer just for shits and giggles. That is a demonstrably stupid assertion in my book. And the thing that is doing what Gary correctly identifies, which is this transfer of wealth, is corporate policy and government policy. It is corporations and governments. And I've had people on X saying to me, well, I think, if Gary's wrong, what do you say about BlackRock buying up all the properties? Well, BlackRock isn't a couple of evil billionaires. It's a corporation, and it's an offshore corporation where a UK wealth tax won't affect it anyway. So what's being demonstrated here, because there is massive support for a wealth tax across all political parties, as you'll see in the 1 minute clip I'm going to play of Sasha's video in a minute, there is a massive lack of understanding about how money, wealth, and taxes and the economy work. Jobs, wages, prosperity, growth, inflation. It is complicated. If it's not something you've ever studied, it is mind-blowingly complicated, and even the world's most advanced experts disagree on it, right? So there is no cold, hard fact about. I mean, the arguments are endless and they go on and on and on, which is why there are all these theorists around. But there's enough real life fact to go on that you can just dismiss theories. Let me begin by recommending that all of you who care about wealth inequality and who care about it being improved, watch this video by Sasha Yanjin. The link is below, and I will also put the link on screen in the live chat, so you can watch the whole thing. And I urge you to watch it because he spells it out much better than I can about why a wealth tax doesn't solve the problem that we all agree is there. All right. So in the live chat, there's the link to it. But give me a second. Here it comes. So 1 minute, 30 seconds maximum of this.
Like the UK government is planning to introduce a wealth tax in the autumn budget.
Can you hear it?
There's a lot of noise about it. They are hinting at it every day. Former Labour leader Lord Kinnock has kicked off this plan by proposing a 2% tax on assets valued over £10 million, saying that if such a tax was implemented, it would rake in £11 billion a year in extra tax revenue. Last week, the Prime Minister's spokesperson refused to deny the growing rumours that the Labour Party is planning to introduce this tax when asked directly by journalists. And this idea to introduce a wealth tax is incredibly popular in the UK. A few days ago, YouGov ran a survey asking if people would support a 2% tax on wealth above £10 million. And 75% of the respondents said they either strongly support or somewhat support the idea. What makes it even more fascinating is that this support is consistent across all demographics. When you split it by age, every age group is overwhelmingly in support of introducing a wealth tax. And even splitting by political preference, 88% of Labour supporters are in favour of a wealth tax, which makes sense, but over 60% of Conservative voters are in favour as well. And more than half of Reform voters said that they support a wealth tax too. So I fully appreciate how unpopular this video is going to be, because introducing a wealth tax would absolutely destroy the UK economy. And it would cause financial hardship for the very people who so strongly support it. And in this video, I am going to explain exactly why that is, however unpopular that may be. If you're in favor of a wealth tax, I suggest that you do watch this video. Give it a chance to just see if your perspective changes in any way once you see the actual numbers, once you see the impacts. Believe me, it would be far easier for me to do the same as most other people, just to jump on this bandwagon and blame the rich for everyone's problems. The reason that you're feeling poor is not because of the economy, it's not because of choices you've made, it's not because of circumstances that have happened in your life. It is because the rich people are the cause of every single problem. I know that if I said that, if I did that, I would immediately get massive views on YouTube. I would become incredibly popular. I'd get invited on all the different podcasts and shows. That's how it works. I would make lots of money doing it because it is an incredibly populist idea. But I prefer to use my brain, to use data, to use numbers and sound economic theory instead. So let's dive into the detail.
Okay. For those of you who don't go on to watch that video, and I recommend that you do, because hopefully it might just make some of you who are blindly cheering for Gary without checking whether or not there's actually any mathematical logic or truth to what he's proposing. That video might change your mind about, and as Sasha says, a wealth tax will actually make things worse for the UK economy, seriously worse. Now, I also want to do something else for you guys. I want to just quickly talk about the fact that let's just assume that it works, right? Let's assume I'm wrong, Sasha's wrong, Gary's right, and that a wealth tax, if it happens, is going to help. Nobody I've asked has any clue how much it would raise, where the money would go, and how much it would be as a proportion of everything. And when I pointed out to them, they go, oh, well, it would be a start. So they're kind of acknowledging that it doesn't work, and then not acknowledging the unintended consequences. But just a second, right? Let's just have a look at this. I want to show you this. In that Neil Kinnock article that Sasha just referred to, he talks about a wealth tax of 2% of everything above £10 million would raise £11 billion a year. I've also heard another calculation that says it would raise more than double that, £25 billion a year. Let's assume it's the higher amount. Let's assume it would raise £25 billion a year. And let's see how much of a difference that would make to the UK government's budget. I'm going to begin by showing you what it is as a proportion of the UK's yearly deficit. In other words, the amount of money we overspend each year as a government, all right? The amount we spend compared to the amount the government's actually got to spend. Okay, so here it is. So do you understand? So this, I'm actually a pie chart, and the pie chart is the whole of the deficit, not the whole of the budget, the whole of the deficit. And then if we get £25 billion wealth tax, this is how much of a difference. This is like how much of the UK's overdraft it would reduce it by. All right. So there you go. That blue circle is £152 billion, which is the overdraft, the amount we go over our budget every year at the moment. It makes less than 1/6 difference to the amount we go over our budget each year. But now let's look at what it is actually as a proportion of the entire UK's budget, right? So if a £25 billion wealth tax was brought in, and if none of the rich who are affected decided to leave the country, let's just decide they all decided to stay. Yeah, we're going to stay, suck it up, take the hit, pay our 2% wealth tax every year. This is how much of a difference it makes to the UK's budget. Okay? It's that yellow slither. The whole pie chart is the entire UK annual budget of 1.27 trillion. The red bit is how much we overspend by, and the yellow bit is how much a wealth tax would raise. And yet people cheer for the wealth tax like it would actually change anything. It wouldn't change anything. It would not even be noticed. It would barely move the needle in terms of the UK's actual problems, if in the theoretical situation that no one actually left because of it. Okay? So, for those of you who've watched Gary's videos and are basically have liked the sound of what he's saying and therefore gone on a bandwagon cheering for a wealth tax without knowing how much it would raise, how it would get used, what the money would actually be used for, and how it would affect poverty, okay? I want to share with you the comments from the only person that he's ever debated in person, right? So Gary declines the opportunity to debate this with his opponents, right? He goes on to shows where he's welcome, and he doesn't really argue with anyone. He's had a couple of arguments. Piers Morgan challenged him a bit, but basically he goes on where he's welcome everywhere, and they'll go, yeah, Gary, we think this is great too, and we're not going to ask you any different questions. He went on to a podcast, which was the Stephen Bartlett Diary of a CEO podcast, where it was him pitched against Daniel Priestley. And this is what Daniel said. Okay, I want you guys to just read this. So this is Daniel Priestley here, okay, right? Gary wants to give you a lesson on how to argue with your friends and family about wealth taxes. And he did a video on this, right? I'm one of the only people on the planet who Gary has actually argued with. Normally, he doesn't engage directly with people who challenge him. I can tell you firsthand how he argues. And you can go and watch the video of this where it actually happens, right? He changes the topic. look, I make bets. In other words, he never answers a direct challenge. He always dodges it and sidesteps the question. He creates outrageous straw man arguments. So you're saying people should just starve? Obviously, literally no one is saying that. He lies. The Duke of Westminster doesn't pay tax. Is that fair? That's literally a lie. It's a complete lie. He makes everything a catastrophe. My friends can't eat. He removes context. My sister can't afford rent. Well, does she have a job? He ignores data. True. And he oversimplifies. So save yourself 20 minutes. That's the playbook. Wealth taxes won't work. They won't collect enough. They do more damage than good. They don't address the real reasons for wealth inequality. Daniel also acknowledges, like all of us do, that wealth inequality is a thing. They're expensive to administer. They tie up the courts. They have failed everywhere else they've been tried except for Switzerland, where they operate instead of corporate gains tax and inheritance tax and at lower rates, right? So in Switzerland, there is a wealth tax, but there's no capital gains tax and no inheritance tax. That's the only place where it functions properly. Okay. So the reason that this bothers me so much and Gary's approach bothers me so much is because he's being divisive and he's calling out individuals as the problem. And it's not individuals, it's government policy. It's government policy and it's corporate policies that are leading to this. And of course, the thing about corporations and governments is that no one ever takes the blame individually. They can all point fingers. Oh, it's the shareholders. Oh, it's the directors. Oh, it's the board. Oh, it was my predecessor. Okay. So nobody in corporations or in government actually has a motivation to make the changes that solve this problem, because corporations and government are a little bit too much like that. That is the problem, not billionaires, not multimillionaires. Okay. It genuinely isn't. And what we're already seeing is that with already some of the tax changes on the wealthy that have been put in place and more that are coming, is that they are leaving the country. And anyone who thinks they're not, you just haven't done your research. I'm sorry, I wouldn't make it up. Go and check it out. They are leaving. They're leaving in increasing numbers. And we've gone past the peak of the Laffer curve. And from capital gains tax for a start, the take is now reducing. The top 1% pay a proportionately vast sum of income tax. All right. And every single time one of those people leaves, it's like 500 or 1,000 regular taxpayers leaving. And that income to the treasury that's lost from those wealthy people leaving ends up being a larger burden that we have to pay for, or more money that the government has to borrow. And who does that hit hardest? Because when the budget measures come in October, and I dread to think what they're going to be overall, right? It's always the poorest who are hit the hardest, always, because even if you tax all the rich a lot of money, they don't have enough. There aren't enough of them to make a big enough difference. Gary is right that the wealth has been transferred and assets have been moving. Okay, he's right. That's because of policy, government policy, corporate policy, tax policy. What you can't do is go and retrospectively take it back, because all of that money was earned legally through the current systems, where there are lots of loopholes. It is those systems that need to be changed. What you can't do is go and grab it back and give it out to everybody, which is what he makes it sound like would happen if you taxed the rich, right? And then he comes up with this utterly ludicrous bollocks that billionaires are funding the far right. It kind of creates pictures of goose-stepping Nazis taking money from billionaires, and somehow that's our problem. It's just ridiculous. Most billionaires agree that there are problems with the taxation system and the corporate system. Most of them want to do something, but taxing personal individuals isn't the solution. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be taxed more. I'm not saying that I'm against wealthy people paying more tax. I'm simply saying it doesn't solve the problem. Gary says it does. Right? I'm pretty certain that if you do increase the kind of wealth taxes they're talking about, you'll end up with a flight of capital from the country. It'll make the UK uninvestable, and it will collapse the economy, right? It will collapse the economy, not just because rich people are leaving, taking the money with them, because it will stop new risk takers starting new businesses, creating employment and investing in the country. That is why it'll cause a collapse. And what I find distasteful about Gary's rhetoric is that he's deliberately rabble-rousing. He's saying things he knows is going to wind people up and get them cheering for him. And they have no basis in fact. And he uses every gaslighter's favorite phrase, which is, everyone knows ... everyone knows ... And that is a phrase that's used. And if you ever hear anyone saying that, you should ignore whatever they're saying, because they say it to make you sound like, oh, is that what everyone thinks? Oh, is that okay? Maybe I like this bloke. I like what he's saying. He says everyone else thinks it. Maybe I'll think it too. And you can always tell when you encounter someone like that in a debate, because you start asking the questions on the topic and then the facts and figures of the topic, and they don't have any. Oh, well, it sounds good and it's going to be a start, isn't it? And so when you get a mass, and this is going to happen, by the way, it's got enormous popular support. I realize that this video is not going to make the slightest bit of difference. But if you are watching this several years down the track from Monday, the 11th of August, 2025, and if wealth taxes were indeed implemented, then I would love you to message me and tell me what's happened, right? Because if you cheered for wealth taxes and then you end up worse off because of them further down the line, and you've watched this video, that was your decision, right? Hopefully, what I hope this video will do is make people just stop and think and go, before we cheer for something that we like the sound of, should we not first check that actually what's being proposed does make sense logically? Should we do a bit of our own research and actually satisfy ourselves that this is a good idea? Does that make more sense than just ignoring the warnings from people like me and Sasha Yanjin and many, many others, Daniel Priestley, all these other people? Should we just ignore their warnings because we don't like the sound of them? Because that's when you end up looking back and feeling stupid, right? I'm not saying you have to believe me or agree with me. I'm saying, please don't blindly believe anyone. Not Gary, not me, not Sasha Yanjin, not Daniel Priestley. Look at the data and the facts that are presented and then make up your own mind like a free-thinking individual does. If you cheer for something that you don't understand because someone you like is cheering for it, you're not a free-thinking individual, right? And you are easy cannon fodder. You are easy prey for the rabble-rousers. Don't be one of those. Don't be easy prey. Right. Questions on this? Do we have any questions on this? Oh, God. You see, this is the kind of utter nonsense you come up against. No one has said this. Nobody is pitying them, and no one would pity them if they had a 2% wealth tax, because they'll just go somewhere else and be fine. Right? That is exactly the kind of straw man, pathetic argument that doesn't stand up. Yes, Timo293. Critical thinkers are severe. You don't even have to be a critical thinker necessarily. Just literally use your own common sense and go, let me just take away my opinion on this and let's look at what evidence there is for and against both arguments. And people saying stuff isn't evidence. Go and look at the numbers, look at the data. Okay, Patati Paul says, it will greatly help house price affordability if the rich leaves because we won't have to compete against them. I promise you, nobody buying a 3-bed semi is competing with a billionaire. This is another ridiculous argument. You're not competing with a billionaire. You might be competing with corporations who are buying up properties to rent out. They won't get affected by the wealth tax. Do you see my point? It's not the billionaires. The billionaires are not out looking at people, ordinary houses that people want to live in. They're not out there looking at that, right? They're maybe looking in Mayfair or a massive 17-bedroom pad with a huge 1,000 acres around it. They are not going to impact anyone out there buying houses. Yes, the corporations buying houses may well impact prices. They're not going to be affected by a wealth tax. Do you see? Gary is funded. He is part of an organization. I can't remember. It's a Washington, D.C. based organization called Millionaires for something. I can't remember what it's called. It's like it's a not for profit. It's an NGO that gets money from the American government, or did, and it's Millionaires for something, Millionaires for a wealth tax or something. And it is an organization. He's definitely part of a larger organization. There's no doubt about that. If you only take one thing away from this, it's the problem is policies for corporations and policies for tax. That is the problem that's causing the wealth transfer that Gary correctly identifies. It's not billionaires taking anybody's money. It's companies and governments taking your money. Principal Mole says the problem, I think you mean, who do you trust is what his point is. And the answer is, if you look for evidence yourself, you don't have to trust anybody. Don't trust anyone. Don't trust me. Do not trust me. Go and look it up for yourself. Don't be part of the foolish masses cheering for something that's going to make the very problem you care about worse. Because what does that make you? What does that make you? So this is another massively misplaced assumption. The billionaires own the corporations, either directly or through shares. The billionaires own very small numbers of the shares in the corporations. The big corporations are mostly owned by pension funds. And whose money is in pension funds? Everybody's savings and pensions, right? Anybody can own a share in a publicly listed company. And yes, there are some billionaires who have some shares, but they don't own by any measure the large majority of it. That's the large corporations that own them. The big hedge funds that have other people's money, your money. Do you have savings and investments? Guess what? Some of them go into these big hedge funds and pension funds, and they own this. This is what I mean, is if you don't understand how the system works and you believe what you hear from some twat down the pub, then you end up spouting problems like this. The number of billionaires in the world is infinitesimally small compared to the number of the rest of us. But the number of corporations another thing is that most people, and it really is most people, because again, more than 50% of reformers, 60% of conservatives and 70 or 80% of Labour voters want a wealth tax. And yet all of you are customers of corporations that are bleeding you dry. Publicly listed corporations, mostly owned by pension funds and the like, which is private individuals' pension money invested. And this problem exists. Another reason that this problem exists is because you don't have people in government who understand how the system works well enough to pull the levers and actually put up resistance against the corporations. Because any government of any kind that tried to alter the rules on corporations so that they couldn't quite profiteer as much as they are is going to get pushback from corporations by way of party donations being retracted. And this is where the problem is. The problem lies, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, don't trust it, don't believe it, consider it, make up your own mind. The problem lies in the relationship between corporations and government. That's where the cause of wealth inequality originates. It is not a handful of ultra-rich blokes that want to fuck us all over, which is what Gary thinks it is. Yeah, here we go. This is what every time everyone's blaming the rich, the corporations aren't getting blamed. Alex Jenkins correctly says a lot of corporations are building buy to rent. Two are Lloyd's and Legal and General. So corporations are helping, and you should give them your money, please. I'm assuming you're being sarcastic there, and that's a joke, because this is the point, right? We're feeding the corporations our money willingly, like lemmings. We're going into the supermarkets and we're going into the big petrol stations, and we're going, look at the proportion of your monthly spend outside mortgages and rent. Okay, we know that's where the most of the money goes, but outside mortgages and rent, where you have discretion over with whom you spend your money, and almost all of it is going to large corporations. So you're on the one hand going, oh, tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich, while the corporations are quietly direct debiting all your money out of your bank every month. Don't trust anybody. Make up your own on important things. Don't trust anyone. Do your own research and make up your own mind. And if you're going to go to people for advice, only go to people who aren't trying to sell you something. This is a good question. Dan says, what causes the policy to be set up this way, that money moves from common to the rich? That's an excellent question. My opinion is that all corporations are legally required to seek and pursue profit for their shareholders. That is their legal obligation. The boards of directors, their job for which they are paid is to enrich shareholders for the benefit of shareholders, which includes pension funds, people's pensions, all those kind of things, right? And so that's the problem, is that there's no balance. There's no check and balance. There's nothing that comes back and stops small, vulnerable customers being stuffed. I'll give you a little example, right? Has anyone ever tried to cancel a subscription to something only to be told that you've got to ring them up or write and give them your cancellation? In other words, you cannot cancel online. Fuck that. If I could change the law, one of the first laws I would change would be this. If you can sign up online, you can cancel online. Law. I would make that the law. And if that happened, so many people would be cancelling subscriptions that they don't need or want, that they currently don't have time to spend 20 to 30 minutes on hold. I recently had to cancel a broadband subscription with TalkTalk. It was like some kind of sick fucking joke what I had to go through. My blood pressure was through the roof. I was enraged. The ridiculous amount of hoops. It was like I had to prove to them and qualify. And in the end, they finally said to me, after I repeated myself countless times, we have decided to allow you. They've decided to allow me to cancel. I'm not even in contract with them. I'm out of contract, right? We have decided that you qualify and we're going to allow you to cancel. I'm sorry, what? It was ridiculous. And I promise you, it took every ounce of forthrightness that I had to make that cancellation happen. A lot of people would have gone, do you know what? I'm just going to keep on paying them every month because this is just too difficult. I should be able to cancel online for anything that you buy online. That straight away is one of the things that would make a massive difference to this problem. Yeah, and this other thing is that I'm utterly astonished at the number of people who think that we don't already pay too much tax and think that more tax solves a problem. Yeah, Ed says, where's the drink, Charlie? It's just tea tonight, I'm afraid. All of us are paying more council tax. All of us have seen a reduction in public services. And there are some people who are like, yeah, that's okay. The answer to the problem is we pay more tax, just pay more tax, just pay more tax. 20 years of proving that increasing taxes doesn't solve a problem. And there are people just going, yeah, but we should pay more tax. More tax is a problem. More tax is the answer. Any more good questions? Clement Moraski says, asset management shell corporations whose directive is to preserve and expand invested wealth by acquiring assets and influencing government policy. Where did you get that, Clement? That's a fantastic quote. Sounds like you copied and pasted it from somewhere interesting. I'd love to know where that came from. Principal Mole, someone with whom I disagree on a lot. It's nice to see something that we agree on here. The politicians are financially illiterate nowadays. Correct. Andrew Armstrong makes a point that inequality is mostly created by money creation pushing asset prices up. Yes, and that's a point that Gary's made, and I agree with that. I agree with his assessment and diagnosis of the problem. I disagree with his proposed solution. Yeah, Dr. Benny Boom Bat says, I'd agree. Corporation relationships with governments plus central banking. Yep. Liam says, morally, is it wrong, though, if ultra-rich people leave to avoid tax? You can't do it so easy if you're a PAYE salary earner. So that's two interesting points there. Morally, if wealthy people have presumably paid all their tax, are they not free? Should they be any less free to go and just go wherever else they want in the world? I mean, everyone else in the world seems free to go wherever they want, pretty much within reason. Any of us can choose to go and move to another country where they allow us and where you can get a visa and go and work, whatever. Anyone can do that. Liam, you're suggesting that people should go, oh, I've worked really hard, I've built up, whatever I've done, I've got this money. I'm just going to stay here now and let people just, I'm just going to pay more tax because morally. No, it's not the responsibility of people who have been successful to bail out other people. And that sets a terrible precedent that ends up leading to disastrous outcomes in the end. You say you can't do it so easily if you're a PAYE salary earner. Why not? Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. You leave your job and go to another country. There are other countries crying out for skilled people who are reliable, enthusiastic, and can do a decent job. Yeah, so people could about the wealthiest people in the world. But Elon Musk is often cited as a problem. He's also the highest taxpayer the world has ever seen. I think in 1 year, a couple of years ago, he paid over $10 billion in tax personally. The money he's made is on the back of the increase in share value of the companies he started. It's not from taking money from anybody. Yeah, WJB. Many economists have already determined that the wealth tax is not a viable option for the UK. It only works in Switzerland because they don't have capital gains tax or inheritance tax. Okay, this is great fun. Okay, I'll take this one on the chin. Alan FPL says, drop the shtick that you're trying to protect the poor. A Google search will tell anyone why you're dedicating so much time to this, because you will have to pay it and don't want to. What a shock. Oh no, I've been rumbled by an internet sleuth again. Yes, I'm live streaming late at night because I'm worried about being a billionaire one day and having to pay a wealth tax. That's my favorite, most stupid comment so far. Luke Benton says, I think you're grossly misunderstanding the scale of wealth that people like Millionaires for Humanity and others like GS, Gary Stevenson, are campaigning to tax more fairly. Okay, Luke. Okay, explain. I've seen multiple things. They've all looked into what a wealth tax would raise in the UK. We're only talking about the UK here, aren't we? Right? And they all say it's between 11 and 25 billion pounds a year. So what do you think I'm misunderstanding? Let me know. I'm very happy to be challenged and proved wrong. Okay, Lonnie Jockstrap says, I can't understand why somebody earning over £10 million. So immediately in that first sentence, Lonnie, you've misunderstood how this is calculated. Anyone earning £10 million is already going to be paying 45% tax if they're earning £10 million, okay? This is not a tax on people's earnings we're talking about. We're talking about a tax on their wealth, their existing savings and assets. I can't understand why somebody earning over £10 million from investments, property, land, or anything other than earnings. So that if it's earning, if it's income from those things, they still pay income tax on it, right? Already at 45%. Would lead to an economic collapse. Would an extra 2% be that disastrous? So you're misunderstanding it. And I'd like to clarify this and happy to be corrected if anyone says I'm getting this wrong. It's a wealth tax, not an income tax. So they're not talking about taxing anyone's income. They're saying if you are worth £10 million, no one has decided how that would be calculated, by the way. Then you'd have to pay 200 grand a year. Is that right? Yeah. Let's double check. Yeah, £10 million. So £1 million would be 10%. 100 grand would be 1%. 200 grand. Yeah. 200 grand. You'd have to pay every year in cash on top of your income tax. Okay. Now, £200,000 that they'll have to pay out of already taxed income on their assets is a major chunk of their income. And some of them just won't have that 200 grand in cash lying around. They would be forced to sell some assets. That's what Gary wants, right? He wants people to be forced to sell assets. But the trouble is, what they're going to do is they're going to quickly sell up and go somewhere else, because that's the only thing you would do in that situation. The one thing people need to understand about wealthy people is that they're more interested in keeping what they've got than they are in making more. It's something that a lot of people get wrong, right? If you've become wealthy, it's more important to keep what you've got than make even more. And keeping what you've got is hard because everyone wants to have a go at it some way or another. Martin, I haven't said offshores pay council tax. I haven't said that, have I? Have I? Yeah, consumption taxes. If you wanted to do something to immediately rectify some tax inequality, and this is one of the first things that I would do, is that I would almost scrap fuel duty. Because fuel duty, we all pay exactly the same amount on every litre of petrol or diesel that we buy, right? And to the very wealthy, they don't even notice it. They don't even notice it. Whereas at the other end of the scale, you've got millions of people for whom they don't know if they're going to be able to fill their tank up this week. And so there's a disproportionate benefit in reducing fuel duty to the lowest income and the smallest businesses. And what that does is it immediately allows people to keep more money, keep more of the money that they're earning, right? It really makes a massive difference. So if you're worried about the poor, the thing to do is to reduce taxes on the poor. That's what you do. Increasing taxes on the rich doesn't and never has helped the poor. Okay, Wilman L says, what is my view on how to fund new infrastructure or defense projects if the government cannot increase tax or borrow more? They can borrow more. So this is the point, right? If right now, in the last month, I think 2/3 of the borrowing went to paying interest on existing debt. That's our problem. That's why we're circling the drain as a national economy, because we're now borrowing to pay interest on existing borrowing. If we were borrowing to build infrastructure that had a real value, That's good. No one will complain with that. The problem is that the UK has become so dysfunctional that nothing ever gets finished. HS2. The budget balloons and balloons and balloons and balloons. And then we're talking about actually cancelling it, shortening it, everything else. That's the problem, is this massive waste. Nobody at the government watches and cost controls government spending like people in businesses control spending. Okay? That is the root cause of this country's problem. Nobody in government controls spending like people in businesses control spending. And if people in government controlled spending like businesses control spending, we wouldn't be in this situation. What was it that one of the government departments that's responsible for administering Help to Buy spent £117 million on a computer system that didn't work, and they abandoned it. That would never happen in the private sector because people would get fired. But government, hey, give multi-million pound IT projects to your mates, deliver or not, doesn't matter, everyone's made some money, no one gets fired. That is why Britain is fucked, because no one in government actually controls costs or even knows how to control costs. And if you don't control costs, guess what happens? They spiral. Some interesting questions here. Gosh, I'm amazed there's so many of you still listen to this. I hope this, by the way, if this video has in any way changed your mind or even made you just think, I'm going to rethink this slightly, I would love to know. And if it hasn't as well, either way, tell me. I'd love to know. I'd really like to know if this has made any difference to anyone's opinion on this. Okay, Sam Jenko says, tax wealth, not work. That's literally his mantra. But you see, this is a reductive, oversimplistic, bullshit binary thing. It's like saying that those are the only two things you can tax. It's ridiculous. You can tax consumption. You can tax land. They're all different. There's a long list of things you can tax. This is exactly the kind of binary, rabble-rousing mantra that you have just lapped up. Tax wealth, not work. Yay! If you've earned money that you've paid taxes on and you're saving it up, would you be happy to pay extra tax on it? Why not? Why should anyone else be happy to pay tax on money that they've saved when they've already earned it and paid their taxes on getting it, right? I agree we shouldn't be taxing work. I massively agree we should be cutting income tax. We should be raising the income tax thresholds. The income tax threshold for 40%, for example, and for the 20% one, so the zero rate threshold and the 20% threshold and the 40% threshold, should all go up with inflation. Yes, a land value tax is a great idea. I don't think it'll ever happen because we have an utterly incompetent government that can't tie its own shoelaces. See, I would, the whole point of this channel is to help everyone end up ending a home. And what I never expected to do on this channel would be to be talking so much about politics and so much about this kind of stuff, rather than just giving people advice on actually buying and selling houses and viewings and offers and all that kind of stuff. But this problem and politics and policy, housing policy, is becoming the biggest threat to everyone's chances of owning their own home. Guys, everyone's saying, what else could be taxed? Just tax. Like tax is the only solution. Why does everyone think that just more tax fixes anything? It doesn't. If the government had if any government had a track record of showing that more tax led to an improvement of something, then we could all get behind that, couldn't we? Right? We could all get behind that, but they don't. And this is why I don't understand why otherwise intelligent people go, hey, we'll just raise taxes. We'll just raise taxes here or raise taxes there. This is I put this up and this really upset a lot of people, this post, but I completely agree with it, right? This is the problem that we have. This is the problem that we have. There is no cost control of the state. No cost control of the state. If there was cost control on government spending like there is in corporations, we wouldn't be in this problem. The solution is cost control at the government. I'm not saying cuts. I'm saying cost control, value for money, innovation, like businesses do because it's profitable. Government doesn't innovate, businesses do. Businesses innovate because it's profitable and because the market, you have to stay competitive, you have to innovate. The government doesn't have a competitor, so it doesn't have to innovate. So guess what? We're all paying more money for stuff we shouldn't be paying for. Senior Stranger asks a fair question. Do you agree with this statement? Wealth taxes aren't to fix the deficit. They're to slow the runaway accumulation of wealth at the top. The two are conflated, and this is very problematic. All right, that's a very constructive question. My response to that is, how does that runaway accumulation of wealth at the top get stopped by wealth tax? Because is it going to result in lower prices for all of us paying corporations? No. So where does that money end up? It ends up in government instead of in the corporations. Does that solve a problem? It might stop the rich getting as rich as they're getting, but it doesn't make the poor any better off at all. And that's assuming that none of the rich leave on the back of this policy. Oh, God, Alan, honestly, just be honest with your audience. You personally don't want to pay a wealth tax. Hands up if you want to pay a wealth tax. Anyone, because any one of the 1,000 of you watching this right now want to pay a wealth tax. Alan, if I ever get to the position where I have to pay a wealth tax, it's a problem I'm looking forward to having, all right? I can't believe you're still... If that's what you think of me, Alan, why are you watching my video? Why are you watching my video? Honestly, it must be making you really angry. Go and watch something you want to watch. Yeah, all those stealth taxes, which again, as a country, we have just... these stealth taxes have been reported on, and yet you never hear ordinary people talking about them. Ordinary people don't understand what fiscal drag is, because fiscal drag is like, what the hell is fiscal drag, right? It's as pay goes up every month, every year, right? Annual pay rises, as inflation goes up, the tax bands don't go up with inflation. They used to, and the Tories stopped that happening. That's fiscal drag, and it's a stealth tax. And it's been incredibly effective. Has it solved any problems? Nope. Cookie Monster, rectum tax. I'm not going to ask exactly what you mean by that, but yeah. You should be... Rubarbino says, you should be taxed each time you open LinkedIn. Yes. No, Patasi Paul says, someone earning 10 million must work 100 times harder than someone earning 100 grand. That assumes that everyone's work is worth the same amount per hour, no matter what you do. That's an insanely silly observation, I think. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous to suggest that. Yeah, Principal Mole says anything up to £10 million would be exempt under the proposal, so its values over this would be applicable. Exactly. Tell that to Alan FPL, right? And by the way, Alan FPL, let's just say that I have a business, right? My business, Best Agent. Who decides what it's worth? It's not listed. It's not traded. There's goodwill. Who decides whether it's worth 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or ever 7 or 8 or 9 or 12? Who decides? How's that calculated? Silly. Miss Jane 782 says the 2 multimillionaires I know have both left the country. You know, people make the assumption that if you're rich, you're clever. That's not true. I can promise you. I know some really thick millionaires. They made their money. They earned it. They didn't inherit it. It's genuinely, once you figure out how to make money, anyone can do it. I promise you. If you've got the motivation and you're willing to get up out of bed and do harder stuff, you can make a lot of money. And it's not a surprise that once you've made that money, you don't want to lose it. So guess what? You are going to go abroad. I think people are going abroad for lots of reasons at the moment. Yeah, Timo293 says a 100% debt to GBP. You mean GDP, don't you? 100% debt to GDP ratio plus a few trillion for the old boys and civil services pensions, a total disgrace. Yeah. And by the way, Alan FPL, if I just wanted to make money, there'd be an easier way to do it than the way I'm trying to do it. I could have carried on doing what I was doing that was making loads of money, rather than investing it all into Best Agent. Okay, Luke. So yes, I believe we should change the rules and tax the super rich just a teeny bit more, eh? Okay, Luke. But you also acknowledge that won't actually fix anyone's problem. It won't fix the wealth inequality problem. Miss Jane 782 says, nope, thought Gary was a knob before this live stream. Well, okay, but remember, just because someone's a knob, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It only matters if what they're saying is true or not. And part of what he says is true. Part of what he says I disagree with. Andrew Baker says, weird start. No one is saying billionaires are evil. Gary is saying economically they all simply buy assets with their spare wealth and they have... No, he does say they're evil all the time. He says they're funding the far right and they're funding media and they're trying to cause... He literally calls them evil. He literally calls them evil. I've seen him do it. I've heard him do it. Chris says, what do you think will happen to the housing market if Rachel Reeves announces more tax increases in the next budget? Do you mean when Rachel Reeves announces more tax increases in the next budget? Well, it's not going to help them go up, is it? I mean, it's a couple of months away. Let's see what she's going to do. I don't know what she's going to do. A lot of people are saying that they expect some new house building stimulus. Yeah, I can see that happening. I don't have an opinion whether it will or won't happen. If it happens, I won't be surprised. If it doesn't happen, I won't be surprised. I think given people's understanding of Help to Buy now, it's less likely to be as popular as it was last time around because a lot of people lost money on it. So unless they implement some crazy, silly, temporary stimulus to the housing market, then I think that the tax rises will cause the economy to tank further and faster, and that will take house prices with it. Yes, as the great housing Stig has said so many times, the UK as a country is not having enough babies, and that is the root cause of all the problems we're facing and will face in future. Amen. Dan, that's not a question. You say there is a problem with your wealth tax theory is not correct. Most billionaires have shares which they borrow against and no tax gain ever arises. That's not true. if they borrow against their shares to buy other stuff that goes up, they will still have capital gains tax. Borrowing against shares doesn't get you out of any tax liabilities that I'm aware of. That's an odd question. Luke Benton asks, what are you personally afraid of, Charlie? Not personally afraid of anything. What I am worried about is the number of people. I mean, everyone's living standards are currently going down. All right. The Resolution Foundation and one other think tank has said living standards are forecast to continue to slide the next couple of years. Gary will claim that's because there hasn't been a wealth tax. But even if they put a wealth tax in this year, it's not going to stop the slide in the economy or people's living standards. And I'm afraid of fewer and fewer people being able to afford a home, or more and more people overpaying for a home. Tapor E says, why should Jeff Bezos get a sweetheart tax deal? He shouldn't. I completely agree. How can you not see the public sector is corrupt for the helping wealth? Look at the gambling industry, literally siphoning off wealth and donating to employees. I completely agree. The gambling industry is outrageous. I would put massive restrictions on the gambling industry. It is literally making poverty worse. It causes suicide, poverty, and loss. Gambling is a massive problem. Jeff Bezos doesn't have a UK sweetheart tax deal. Amazon might do, and it shouldn't. And those are exactly the corporate policies I'm talking about. Everyone thinks that Jeff Bezos owns Amazon. He doesn't. He owns a lot of shares in it, and he's wealthy, but a lot of people own Amazon. But the corporation gets the benefit of government policy. Like, people getting rich itself isn't a problem. What people mind is some people getting rich when others aren't. That's what people care about. Nobody cares how rich the rich are getting when everyone's on the up, do they? No one cares. It's only when things are on the down, which they are now, that everyone is angry and wants someone to lash out at. Great, let's blame the rich. It's not. It's policy. It's always policy. Guys, I've got to wrap it up. I'm sorry, I'm going back to questions that are now 15 minutes ago. I'm so sorry for all the questions I didn't get to answer. Thank you for watching. I would very much like to know whether or not, if you're watching this, let me know, please, if this has made you reconsider anything about your position on a wealth tax. If you were for a wealth tax, has my video made any difference? I'm expecting that it hasn't. Nick Jones says, Charlie, I think you must be a billionaire. One day, maybe. Not yet. It's a long way off. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I'm just trying to go through all the things. I'm going to just finish up by saying, please, if you don't already and you'd like to, get my weekly newsletter, mhwc.co.uk/newsletter. And if you're buying and you're offering, always make your offer. Never worry about offending a seller, right? Never offer more than your maximum comfortable offer, and never offer less than your maximum comfortable offer if you are offering on a home you want to buy to live in. Okay? And if you haven't already done so, please go and watch my 10 golden rules for home buyers and use my free offer email template. Very important. Have a fantastic one, guys. I will see you on the next one. Thanks a lot, guys. Good night. Bye-bye.